Well, when I was given this by the marketing team saying 15 minutes, then somebody in the CISO community told me, boss, look at it as 900 seconds. That's the power of this community, probably. Thank you so much for that encouragement. Well, the topic is resilient enterprises, and I think this is the buzzword now. Talking about resilience in terms of enterprise, cybersecurity, as we know, has become the backbone. We talk about businesses in a big way, talking about resilience, whether it is like on the financial side, bringing down the cost, moving ahead in terms of your business practices, or whether you look at the workflow in terms of the supply chain, or you look at the leadership in terms of the decision making. There is a lot of resilience that's been built. There is a continuous growth which many of the organizations given these parameters are trying to aspire. And there have been all these said and done come to the very crux of the digital and technology transformation which is taking place. That's which is fueling this big time digital transformation that we are seeing. And cyber resilience is probably at the crux of it. And as we are talking about the increased demand on cyber security practitioners, we are seeing that there has been a lot of fatigue. There is a lot of change in terms of approach which many of the cyber professionals are looking at. And talking about these in general, this is basically an outcome that we are seeing because now there is a huge shift post-pandemic. And I think many of the speakers would have spoken about it, whether the networks have become borderless. You have getting more and more telemetry, number of tools that have been increased. The pressure on the cyber security teams have gone tremendous. Probably taking that, I thought to bring in some humor. In terms of this particular slide for our cyber security professionals, which I am part of from the last 22 years and evolving, Mr. Natwarlal, if somebody knows, have seen this movie some time back, and it's not very different in terms of what a cyber security professional today goes through, especially our CEO and the CISOs and the CROs. So basically, if you see in this movie, Mr. Bachchan went through all this in terms of building a very resilient outcome towards the objective of securing those villagers from the adversaries. And definitely he had all those challenges that the CISOs probably go through. So an old time movie, probably, but you can definitely have a look at it because ultimately, given the challenges, there have always been outcomes which are quite, we all ultimately achieve the practice of the practice of achieving, securing our networks. People, processes, and technology go hand in hand, and then definitely there are incentives that come along with what you achieve. Yeah. So I thought of bringing this just prospectively to bring something that is positive, apart from what we typically do and how important that this community forms in terms of taking our industries ahead. We came out with a research report, which was a 3-volume research report talking about security outcomes. And this research report was again done by Sententia. It was not a very general research report. It was a research report that what is it about cybersecurity? There are many reports which come in terms of trends. We took this research to 4,700 practitioners across the world. And if you look at it, it was across industries. It was a 2 blindfold report whereby we did not know whom we are probably talking to and what are the questions typically and who's answering them in terms. The 3 reports are quite correlated. So why I'm bringing this here, not as a marketing tool prospectively, but to give you an insight on how organizations can prospectively achieve or look at achieving the cyber resilience. I'm sure as we are practicing towards it. The first volume, which came 2 years back, which talked about 11 outcomes from 25 practices odd. So what are these outcomes in terms of with data-backed research? And from these 25 best practices, we took up the 5 practices in terms of, again, what are they basically leading towards to. So we could derive that there was a common technology infrastructure correlated in these best 5 practices that could be adopted or was adopted to probably achieve the best cybersecurity practices by any organization. And then we came out with a 3rd volume, which again investigated into these research in terms of understanding on what are these, what is common among these technology architectures. How are they building these architectures which are so resilient in terms that yes, they secure every entity of their organization and outcomes. So what interests me particularly is that as this was carried out with 4,500 executives odd across so many continents and countries, you would see that these were some of the parameters on which they spoke about in terms of preventing major security incident losses to ensuring the business continuity in terms. So these were the key, I would say, outcomes that they were looking for. The interesting part. Now, both sides of the coin in any organization that you have, the practitioners and also on one side, the people who are going to adapt, what are you trying to achieve? So when you say that these technologies or tools have to be adopted, on the other side, people who are actually managing those tools, what are their perspective around those achievements or those behaviors? So if you look at it, containing incidents could be at the second most priority for a CISO, but probably the same thing in terms of a security professional comes quite bottom. So we need to probably bring this perspective across the organization, though there is nothing wrong because everybody has its own side to look at things on how they can be best achieved. But one thing was common: cost effectiveness and retainment was talent, because that's something which is also at the moment a bit of a crisis for us in our industry. These are the 7 outcomes that stood out. I would not like to read all of them, but especially the last 3. Maximizing zero trust architecture or adoption. Nothing new about this particular terminology. Implicit trust, as we all knew it 10 years back, again rephrased into a better terminology to present. Extended detection and response. So we don't want our tools to be more passive. We want them to be more reactive, more intuitive. Something which can bring more contextual value in terms of a response which can be more automated. So the report is all available. You can basically scan, download it from the Cisco website too. So the approach needs to be on these fundamentals when you look across, because networks are borderless. There is a lot of hybrid culture out there. Zero trust is at the core of any adoption around cybersecurity, which needs to be. And then how do we build that security resilience? So we all know about the zero trust framework. I don't want to go through the NIST architecture, but 3 important parameters to probably look at. One is, very importantly, the workforce. That's where you want to ensure, yes, your best practices, tools, and controls are all enabled, and we all have that. The other area that you need to look at is probably, from the workload perspective, the applications, the data, the movement of those data, the resignment of those applications, and then probably the workplace, which is also very core. We have many controls at the workplace for north-south traffic, but it is a time when the zero trust framework talks about a lot of introspection into the east-west traffic, a lot of machine learning processes that you need to put in terms of getting this intelligence. These are the 3 areas which we need to typically focus, and just not zero trust access, which is also a misleading concept in our industry. Many a times we vendors talk about ZTA. We just limit it to a zero trust access behavior, whereby it is a zero trust architecture or a framework that we need to talk about holistically. So don't think that our users are having a multi-factor or a 2-factor authentication with probably a posture assessment and we have achieved zero trust prospectively. I wanted to talk about something for the CISO community, just not present slides about about technology and tools. Something what happened as a use case in Cisco. Cisco is a 90,000 plus employee company with probably presence across the continent. I don't need to get into details about the Cisco as an organization, but we walk the talk. We went through a breach some time back, an attempt to breach, I would say. Many of you would have gone through this article to understand how did Cisco experience. I think this is very common, with how much ever we put in terms of awareness and education. The weakest link in our domain lies with the user, right? And with the user being totally hybrid and the edges are out there, the networks are nowhere in your control, you need to ensure as much of awareness. Similar was the thing when it happened probably last year for us. As with the best practices and controls that we put in, there was no outbreak. What was the learning from this is available on the tool, and I'll try to prospectively bring. What happened is that we had the multi-factor authentication, but you could see there were multiple requests sent to the user, which led to a fatigue in terms of those prompts, right? I'm talking an year back, and now we can know this as MFA bombing and whatever new terms would have associated with it. But could you probably improvise on this technology of MFA adopted, which is our own tool called Duo in Cisco Secure or with the employees on their laptop? Could there be a risk-based contextual understanding based on the number of prompts that are coming, from where they're coming, what it is, and things like that. Because here your password was compromised, but just by a synchronization with the browser. So beyond that, your MFA is the next defense. But yes, the MFA was also compromised because there was some sort of, again, I would say a human element where after multiple attempts, the user says, accepted boss. I don't know what's happening. Looks like some application is malfunctioning. Let me allow this. Okay, I'll not get into too much of detail. What have we improvised on it? Today, as any organization would look to move beyond MFA, to look at passwordless, probably as an adoption, to look beyond the weakest link in terms of access, bring in biometric, bring in recognition in terms of, bring in contextual value in terms of how you want a user to access, in terms of any change in terms of the access pattern. He's allowed access from a trusted network. Suddenly he's moved beyond the trusted network during the course of connection. Can I bring in a new request to validate the user? So these are some of the things that we introduced or innovated in our technology to bring in more contextual value, to bring in more introspection of the user or the access beyond the typical MFA. We are calling it now as probably the risk-based authentication also. So not only that the user moves from a geo perspective, but the user have moved from a connectivity perspective. Any change in the application access in real time is what you want to enforce in a zero trust framework. Not just by authenticating the user and then giving an access for one time and it is being done. So probably in the essence of time, I did not want to go in more detail. Well, Cisco, as we know, the elephant in the room as they call, but probably a company with a lot of stake for you, a lot of innovation with its backing. We all talk about platform, and platforms don't come very easy. Neither do I mean that everybody needs to adopt a Cisco platform completely. The perspective here is about integration, orchestration, bringing in more value for your current investments, which Cisco has been trying to do over the years. So the multiple acquisitions that we did over the period of time, the one thing that we did best is probably integrate them, and that's what I have been trying to explain on the booth we have along with my team. That boss, we are not here to probably tell you that you need to buy all this or these are my products and things like that. What is that innovation that I have done to help your networks and security converge much better and given more meaningful outcomes? So we generally are also a punching bag for some of our startup innovators, but not many know that Cisco puts in a lot of investments in bringing the startup companies to the next level. So we have been investing all across into various cybersecurity companies. Many of them belong from India. So there's been a lot of innovation. There's been a lot of strategic acquisition to bring in a bit more landscape to you, a holistic landscape whereby your investments are secured, your perspective around cyber resilience is more confident. So if you look at this particular framework, this is the zero trust framework. Your user, your network, which is either at the branch level or either at the cloud or either IoT, whichever level you look at it, you want different controls in your network. We can help you achieve these controls even at the application level, even at the level of your access to your workloads. And then all of this is well integrated, giving you a single dashboard through our XDR tool. Now, not many know that our XDR tool is free to consume along with any of the Cisco products that you buy, security products. So you can integrate this very well with your SIM tools or your SOC tools and probably bring in more visibility and more automation, probably to your, to mitigating your threats or getting into more investigation of things. So in last crux, I just wanted to bring this perspective that we want to harmonize. We've got a minute to go. We want to harmonize security. So we want to make it simple. And if you probably would like to spend some time with us, we can bring you that perspective because already you have consumed a lot of tools. I did not bring in the Gartner Outlook for 2023, where the first thing is that reduce the number of vendors, consolidate. At the same time, the C-level executives have now got the aspect of risk in their basic achievements that they need to achieve. So there's a lot of change in practices that you need to see. And probably a partner like Cisco is the best way to look at it in terms of achieving it. So thank you.